Alright, so in this video I thought we would explore some really cool things to do with textures and type effects. And you can see here I've got just a basic stock photo image of a texture like a concrete wall. And even though I do like the texture, I want to make it a little bit more dramatic of a texture. And I want to make it look really rough and everything like that. And the way I'm going to do that is through the use of lighting effects. And this is going to do two things. It's going to really give my texture a lot more depth and roughness to it, but it's also going to kind of establish a light source for the text we're going to apply. And to do that, I'm going to go into the Channels palette here. And we can go in here, and what I'm looking for is a channel that has a fair amount of contrast, but not too much. You can see, if I toggle, just click through these, you can see, well, the blue has a great deal of contrast. Green is, or red is a little light. And green seems to be just about what we want. So I'm just going to drag the green down to the new channel icon here, simply make a duplicate. And to smooth out any really fine edges in there, I'm going to go under Filter to Blur, Surface Blur. And here I'll use the settings I've already got set here, which is a radius of 8 and threshold of 10, and we'll hit OK. And you can see it's smoothed it out quite a bit, keeping some of that area in there. Now, I'm going to go back into my Layers palette. Let's go back and reactivate our channels. Go back to my Layers palette, and I'm going to create a new layer right above that one, and we're going to fill this layer with a neutral 50% gray. I'm going to press Shift Delete, get my fill dialog here, 50% gray. It's good. Now, on that layer, I'm going to go under Filter to Render, and then down to Lighting Effects. And here we will get this giant dialog here. And my light source is pretty much positioned exactly where I want it. If it wasn't, I could simply grab these handles and turn them any way, but I do want that light source coming straight up from the top. And if I push those handles out a little bit, it gets a little brighter over there. And then the only other thing I'm going to change is down here where it says Texture Channel. And we're going to go and select, it goes right off screen here, but it's the green copy that we made right here at the bottom of this list. So I select that, you can kind of subtly see that texture that's showing up in here, and that's become a bump map. And because it's going using that light source and creating kind of a beveled or an embossed texture there. So when I click OK here, you'll see that effect take shape right there. Now, what I'm going to do to make it interact with my original layer is simply change the blending mode. I'm going to go under this blending mode menu and go to Overlay. And there you can see texture is gotten a lot rougher, and the light source, you can see that difference before and after. It's gotten a lot rougher and a lot more interesting. Now, going to go ahead and set some text. So let's go over here and select my text tool, and I'm just going to click once in there. And actually it made a text box. I don't want it to do that. Just want to click in there so we can type right inside the layer. And I'm just going to type, let's do live. And we'll scale that text up quite a bit. I'm simply bringing up my free transform and holding on the Shift key and scaling that out proportionally. And then press Enter. Now that I've got my texture the way I like it, and I've got my text set to the right size, one thing I need to do now, with the texture the way it is, I'm going to merge those two texture layers. I'm going to turn off this text layer for a second. Activate that top texture layer and do Command or Control E to merge those two layers together. Then I'm going to make a duplicate of that layer. Then I'm going to drag this duplicate over top of the text, because we want to be able to make this to where our text is still editable, even though we've applied a number of complex effects to it, and it will look like a completely rastered effect. It will still be editable text, which is one of the really cool things about this. We can go ahead and work through this effect, and in the end, if we don't like the word, if we like the effect and want to use it on another word or something like that in another design, we can certainly do that. So I'm going to turn on that text layer. We don't see it because it's, of course, sitting behind this texture layer. I'm going to simply activate that as a clipping group by holding down my Option or Alt key and clicking between those layers. And again, we're not seeing it because it's blending in with that background layer. Well, to fix that, I'm simply going to select that background layer, bring up my hue and saturation, Command or Control U, and let's change the color of that background like there. Let's click Colorize, and let's perhaps give it a kind of a blue color, and kind of subtle, just like that. So there's our text. It's not so exciting yet. because we need to apply some depth to it through a layer style. So on the text layer, not the texture layer, but the text layer itself, I'm going to go and to my effects here, actually the effects menu right here, and we're first going to select bevel and emboss. And we'll get this giant window here, and I'm going to unclick use global light because I want the light source. Of course, we know it's coming from above as we established in our lighting effects, so I'm simply going to make that set there. I'm going to change my technique to chisel hard. Then we're going to increase that depth quite a bit so you can see, really get some defined edges there. And go up here to our layer styles, we're going to add a drop shadow. And I'm going to increase the distance somewhat and the size, but I also need to change that light source. I'm going to turn off global light again and make sure that that light source is coming from the top, as you can see right there. Now, we've got kind of a subtle shadow being cast because the text is pretty much right at, close to the wall here. But we want to kind of establish more of a shadow, like an ambient shadow in a sense, like there's a subtle ambient light that's shining in front of it. So I'm going to activate an outer glow here. By default, we get this really ugly yellow as our outer glow. I'm simply going to select black and change the blending mode to multiply, and we'll bring that size out quite a bit. And that will, let's drop that opacity just a tiny bit there, and that will establish, really kind of separate it from the wall that much more. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to command click on the text and load it as a selection. Then I'm going to command click on the new layer icon to create a new layer right beneath the text. I'm going to fill that selection with black, and since black is my foreground color, it's going to press Option Delete and then deselect, Command or Control D. Then I'll bring up my free transform, Command T. Then I'm going to simply grab this middle bottom handle here and drag it down just a little bit, kind of stretching out that text, because we really want this light to be casting a long shadow along this wall here. And then I'll just press Enter. Then I'm going to create a layer mask on that layer. Double click right there, or just click once actually. Simply go over here and get my gradient tool, and making sure we're going from a black to transparent gradient and drawing from the bottom going up, holding down that shift key. It's going to draw a layer mask on there. Maybe not quite that much. Just like that. And then I'm going to select the layer itself, drop the overall opacity down to about 60%. And there you pretty much have it. We've taken one textured file, that one background texture, applied some text, and through the use of some clipping groups and some layer styles, given it some real depth and dimension right here in this layout. So there you have it. And like I said as before, now we did create this shadow, which is of course a rastered effect, but if we wanted to change the text, simply turn off that layer, double click on your text file here, and simply change the text. Let's go with rock. And you can see that all those effects are re-rendering right on the fly, and it looks really good. So there you go, text effects with textures.